I'm Sarah. I'm a teacher on the EAP extended program, and today I'm going to run you through some tips on how to take a great profile picture for your LinkedIn account. I've got a bit of an interest in photography, and I've been doing it on a more serious level, I guess, since 2004. So I've done a bunch of weddings and lots of family photography and kids photography as well. I think I really started back in 2004 when I bought my first SLR camera, or digital SLR, which stands for single lens reflex. So they are the cameras where you can remove lenses and add that kind of thing, which is a nice 70 to 200 mil and does some really lovely portrait shots, for instance. This is also a good portrait lens, 50 mil. So I have a Canon 60D. I've got a few different bodies, but that's my preferred one at this point. So these are some of my photographs over the years. That's one of my wedding shots from a number of years ago. And I like this one because even though you can't see her eyes in this, it's kind of, making a focus of her hair, blurring out the background and sort of the rest of her and the flowers, etc. More recently, I've done some family photography down at the beach, and I used this lens up here to take this photograph of some friends of mine. I really like action shots, more natural style shots, and this is my friend's son being thrown up in the air. So that's my kind of style of photography generally. But today we're going to look specifically at your profile shots and what you should provide for LinkedIn. Okay, so we're going to have a look at some quite obvious bad profile shots to start with. Okay, so here we have this particular man. The chips obviously won't do him any favours when he goes for a job. The photo is clearly out of focus. His eyes aren't clear. He's not facing the camera, and you can see the background is not effective. There's an open door, it's on a strange angle, etc. So quite an obvious problem with this photograph. Let's have a look at some others. So we have this, attractive looking girl. However, there's an issue with her pout, we call it. So it's kind of a selfie, which is probably more for a different forum than a professional LinkedIn page. Okay, her makeup's a bit heavy. And clearly the background is distracting. It has something here which we can see quite clearly. So our main focus isn't on her face. Here are some other quite obvious examples. This one, of course, it's sort of too bright. There's some reflection in the glasses. Glasses aren't a problem. If you usually wear glasses, you can certainly wear them in your profile picture. However, here there's some distracting lines behind. Not a particularly flattering angle with his double chin here. Okay, so keep that in mind too. It's very, very close up. So it's better to have a bit more space there. Okay, clearly things like no caps, no cats, and this is shown as something which is a bit more appropriate. And we'll talk about why that's more appropriate in a minute. Again, not a great look. Black and white for starters, a little bit out of focus, a bit too serious. And I guess this is the opposite. We have a man who looks like he's no doubt a lot of fun. He's actually quite professionally dressed. Could have probably fixed his hair to be a bit neater. However, the background is distracting and it's a little bit too over enthusiastic. Okay. Let's move on now to what LinkedIn or a site like that does expect. So here we have a great photo, and I think immediately you can probably see why. The background is not distracting; it's blurred out, carefully blurred out, and we'll talk about ways to do that if you don't have a kind of expensive or kind of fancy camera. She's well dressed. This is super important. She's professionally dressed. The makeup is minimal, jewelry minimal as well. Hair is nicely groomed, and you'll notice about the expression. She's got a very natural smile, and her eyes are in focus, looking directly at the camera. Folded arms is quite a good way to keep your posture good. Keep your posture straight and slightly perhaps turned away from the camera. You don't have to face the camera dead on, but your eyes need to be looking at the camera. So an example of a male, again here with glasses on. This looks like a professional shot with that, very professional background, but which is, certainly an option for you if you don't want to take your own photograph. So, a nice suit, in this case glasses, clearly, shaved, and hair fixed in place. Another lovely shot, very natural smile, minimal makeup and jewellery, and the background is not distracting either. Thinking about outdoor shots, one of the tips you'll see at the end is to find natural light where you can. It's often a nicer, more natural look. If you prefer to do it inside, then try to perhaps stand near a window where natural light is coming in. You can see here, again, the makeup is pretty basic but flattering, as is her hair and her dress. Her dress as in wearing a suit. Eyes must be in focus. That's very, very important, and looking directly at the camera. As I said, the background is blurred out, so it's not distracting. And, it's fine to do an outside shot like that. That can be quite nice. What I would say about this one is there's quite a lot of space around her. LinkedIn suggests that you have 60% of the shot as your basically head and shoulders. So do think about that too. We'll talk about editing in a moment. And finally, another nice background, a brick wall works well. So you could find one around Melbourne University or Trinity itself, where, you can find a laneway or something and take a shot such as this one. Again, think about she's got her head on the side a little bit there. Another natural smile, not so many teeth showing. So there's different ways to appear natural. Okay. So what we might have a quick look at now is iPhoto. So once you've taken the shot, there are a number of things you can do with it. And no doubt you guys have experimented with things like iPhoto or a similar program before. Okay, so as you can see, this is a really nice shot anyway, but let's just have a look at the possibilities, how we can enhance it, if we want to. So cropping is one thing, as I suggested before here. Possibly there's too much of her torso in there. We might bring it back to something like that. Think about composition too. So the composition, it's not always the best thing to put a head directly in the middle of the frame. With composition, there's a rule called the rule of thirds, which is about putting important things kind of at these intersecting lines. Okay, so it's possibly not a bad idea to put it in the corner of the photograph a little bit more, or certainly at least off-center a little. And you may cut out some of this. You'll need to read the LinkedIn guidelines about uploading and what they really want from a photograph as well. Okay, so here we have a much closer shot of her head. Make sure it's still clear. This one's not too bad. And then there's a bunch of things you can do to it, of course. These filters are a bit too strong. As I said, you don't want black and white. You can play with this a little bit, but don't overdo it. We don't want, kind of colour overwhelming the image itself. So I'd basically avoid those harsher filters. What is a possibility is keeping with none, perhaps, by using some more subtle tools, such as adjustments. Okay, so you can add light, contrast, some more colour if you think it's needed, or less colour. Here you can add things like vignette. And so vignette, if there wasn't a nice blurred background, you could use one here and create a bit more blurring and in that case darkness around the edges, or possibly even lightness around the edges. Okay, so vignette's quite a nice tool as long as you don't overdo it. Okay. So that's probably about it for me. You're certainly not at a disadvantage if you don't have an SLR camera. Don't go out and buy one. They're very just for this. They're very expensive, as I'm sure you're aware. So you're not at a disadvantage particularly. It's more about, I would suggest, about composition, sorry, and what you do with some subtle, kind of editing techniques afterwards.